In Chinese history, one thing happened hundreds of times over. Farmers could no longer survive, so they rose up and toppled a dynasty. Then, a new dynasty was built. Farmers once again could not survive, and once again they rose up. 2,000 years, the same script performed on repeat. The strange part is not why it happened, but why it was never solved. The man best qualified to solve this problem was Zhu Yuanzhang. Zhu Yuanzhang. He was himself a farmer on the edge of starvation. His parents and eldest brother all died of hunger in the same month. He entered a Buddhist monastery just to have something to eat, but the monastery ran out of food too. He fought his way up from the absolute bottom of society, overthrew the Zhang dynasty, and founded the Ming dynasty. If any emperor in history truly understood why farmers rebelled, it was him, and he tried. He enacted the harshest anti-corruption laws in Chinese history. Any official caught embezzling more than 60 taels of silver would be flayed alive, the skin stuffed with straw and displayed at the entrance of the government office. He restricted land consolidation, distributed fields to farmers, kept taxes light, and even gave peasants the legal right to physically drag corrupt officials to the capital for punishment. He did virtually everything an emperor could do. Yet the dynasty he built 276 years later fell to Li Zicheng's peasant rebellion. The cycle that Zhu Yuanzhang spent his life trying to break completed its loop on his own dynasty. Where was the flaw? To answer that, you have to understand the underlying structure of the cycle. The foundation of ancient Chinese society was land. At the start of every new dynasty, the situation looked roughly the same. War had just ended. The population had plummeted. Vast tracts of land lay empty. The court distributed fields to farmers, kept taxes low, and society stabilized. This was the so-called Golden Age. But land does not grow, population does. As decades of peace continued, the population increased while per capita farmland shrank. At the same time, the powerful aristocrats, local gentry, wealthy clans began swallowing up peasant land through purchases, coercion, and predatory lending. Farmers who lost their land became tenant laborers, paying rents heavier than any government tax. Meanwhile, the large landholders who had absorbed all this land typically had the connections to avoid taxation, so the court's tax base was actually shrinking. Revenue fell, but expenditures did not. Border defense, the bureaucracy, imperial consumption, so the court raised taxes. On whom? On the farmers who still had land. More farmers went bankrupt. More land was consolidated. The tax base shrank further. Taxes went up again. In psychology, there is a concept called a positive feedback loop, a system whose output continuously amplifies its own input until the system collapses. The second half of every dynasty was exactly this kind of loop, spiraling until someone raised a banner and declared, "Are kings and generals born to their stations?" But this only explains why dynasties collapsed. It does not explain why the problem was never fixed. Zhu Yuanzhang was not blind to the cycle. He saw it more clearly than anyone. The problem was this: he could punish corrupt officials, execute powerful landowners, redistribute farmland, but he could not change one fundamental fact. His rule depended on the very people he was trying to restrain. An emperor cannot personally manage every acre of land and every village. He needs bureaucrats and local gentry to run the grassroots level of governance. And these were exactly the people driving land consolidation. While Zhu Yuanzhang was alive, he held them down through sheer force and terror. The moment he died, the entire system snapped back. The flaying law was abolished, controls loosened. Within a few generations, land consolidation under the almost worse than it had been at the end of the almost by almost. A modern analogy makes this clearer. Imagine a CEO who discovers that middle management is bleeding the company dry. He can fire a batch of managers, but he cannot eliminate middle management itself, so the next batch soon starts doing the same thing. This is the point where the cycle becomes truly unsolvable. Every dynasty's founder depended on a class of entrenched interests to operate the state, and that class's deepest instinct was to accumulate land and wealth. An emperor could kill a group of people, but he could not kill the structure itself. One number illustrates how precise this cycle was. The major unified dynasties of Chinese history had strikingly similar lifespans: Western 4 to 10 years, Eastern 4, 195 years, Tang, 289 years, Ming, 276 years, Qing, 268 years. Most fell between 200 and 300 years. This was no coincidence. It was roughly the time it took an agrarian empire to travel from land-distributed taxes light to consolidation complete. Tax base collapsed, farmers cannot survive. The deeper irony is that peasant uprisings were never the cure. Rebellions overthrew old dynasties, but the new dynasties built by the rebels offered no institutional innovation to prevent the same thing from happening again. After Chen Sheng and Wako Wuguang came Galway Wugong, and the Han Dynasty he founded eventually fell to the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Huang Chao shattered the foundations of the Han Dynasty, plunging China into half a century of chaos. Li Zicheng overthrew the Ming Dynasty and lasted 42 days in Beijing before being driven out. The Taiping Tengo Taiping Heavenly Kingdom held half of China for 14 years before destroying itself through internal power struggles. Every uprising was a system reboot, but after each reboot, the same operating system loaded up again. This is the deepest tragedy of ancient Chinese politics. It was not that any particular emperor was too cruel or any particular dynasty too corrupt. It was that the underlying architecture of the entire system guaranteed its own collapse, and what was rebuilt after each collapse was the same architecture. Peasant rebellion was not the solution. It was part of the system, the hard reset button that the machine pressed when it crashed. Press it, everything clears to zero, and the same process begins again. 2,000 years of repetition, not because no one learned the lesson, but because in an agrarian empire built on land as its core resource and gentry as its instrument of local control, the lesson was structurally impossible to learn. Perhaps the only thing that could truly break the cycle was never inside the cycle at all.